Hi everyone, Stephen Daniele here, holistic health coach and founder of Team Euphoric. Today I'm going to be giving a book review of Drs. Jonny Bowden and Sinatra's The Great Cholesterol Myth. This is a terrific book and one that I believe everyone should have, and the reason everyone should have it is because a lot of people have a misconception about what cholesterol is, the role that it plays in the body, and a lot of people believe that it's really, really bad and that you should avoid everything cholesterol, everything saturated fat. Before I get into that actual topic, we have to go back 60 years to Chek, when Chek came up with his lipid hypothesis. What the lipid hypothesis was, Chek believed that having high cholesterol was the reason that people were having a lot of heart attacks, and he also believed that fat was the reason that drove cholesterol up. Later on, he believed that saturated fat was actually what really caused cholesterol to go up, so he started to demonize saturated fat and the other types of fat he labeled as good fat. This is untrue. So in the last 60 years, we've done a lot of research for cholesterol, and we've discovered that there's actually a lot to be examined with different types of cholesterol. For example, when looking at cholesterol, most people think of HDL and LDL. HDL being the good type of cholesterol and LDL being the bad type of cholesterol. Now we know that there's also VLDL. VLDL is very low density lipoprotein, and VLDL is much more harmful than LDL. Also with HDL and LDL, HDL is going to have several subtypes as well as LDL. So with HDL, you have HDL type 2 and type 3. Type 2, it's going to be very large, buoyant molecules, and these are going to be protective. HDL type 3, these are going to be very small, dense, hard molecules, and these are possibly inflammatory molecules. So having a pattern of type 2 HDL is going to be beneficial for you. Going to LDL, if we look at LDL, same thing. We have LDL type A and LDL type B. LDL type A, these are going to be the buoyant, fluffy molecules that are protective unless they are damaged by oxidation. And then we have our LDL type B. LDL type B, those are going to be your small, dense, hard molecules, and they are pro-inflammatory, and they also cause atherosclerosis. So when looking at the HDL and LDL, you don't want to just look at purely the HDL numbers and purely the LDL. You want to look at what type of pattern you have. With HDL, do you have a pattern 2 or pattern 3? With LDL, do you have a pattern A or do you have a pattern B? With either of these, you want to make sure that the fluffy molecules, that the type 2s and the type A, is going to be higher than the small, dense molecules, because those ones are going to be pro-inflammatory and they are going to wreak havoc on your system. Also, what we have noticed is that HDL and LDL, cholesterol in general, it's not a really good predictor for heart disease because 50% of people that suffer from heart attacks have normal cholesterol levels. And 50% of people with high cholesterol levels have perfectly healthy hearts. So we can't just look at the cholesterol numbers and say, okay, cholesterol is the reason that these people have their heart attacks. We have to look further. And looking further, what we have discovered is that there is a much higher correlation between triglycerides that plays a role in heart disease, particularly the relationship and the ratio of triglycerides to HDL cholesterol. You want to have a very low ratio. For example, if you have a ratio of triglycerides that is 150 milligrams per deciliter and you have a number of 50 milligrams per deciliter of HDL, you have a ratio of 3. If you have a number of triglycerides that is 100 milligrams per deciliter and your HDL particles are 50 milligrams per deciliter, you have a ratio of 2. The lower the ratio, the better it is. What we have found is that the higher your ratio, especially when you start getting to a ratio of 5 and above, that's going to be very bad and it's going to be a very good predictor for heart disease. If you have a ratio of 2, it's going to be very good. You don't really have too much to worry about. So triglycerides are going to be much more important and a much more predictive factor in determining heart disease. Aside from cholesterol and triglycerides, we also want to look at the levels of inflammation and oxidization in the body. Inflammation and oxidization are going to be very bad for your body and they are going to be a good predictor of heart disease. Particularly if you consume a lot of sugar. Sugars are going to be pro-inflammatory and they are also going to oxidize the molecules inside of your body, which is going to be very bad as we stated earlier. So sugar's bad. Saturated fat, it's actually good. Our brain is comprised mostly of saturated fat, so is the rest of our body. So if our brains are comprised mostly of saturated fat, then clearly if we completely eliminate saturated fat, it's going to change our biochemistry. Also, another thing stated in this book is that if you were to go back 60 years, as soon as the lipid hypothesis was presented, everyone just kind of jumped on the bandwagon and they didn't really do any research. They just automatically assumed that Ansel Keys was right because it seemed like a no-brainer. If you eat cholesterol, your cholesterol is going to go up, and cholesterol is the reason for heart disease. However, after that became thought of as true, what happened was these statin drugs were created, and the statin drugs were meant to lower your levels of cholesterol. However, the problem with statin drugs are that they are very ineffective. Statin drugs, unless you are a man who is over 40 and who has already suffered at least one heart attack in your life, statin drugs really aren't that beneficial. If you are a woman or if you are under 40, there's really no reason that you should be taking a statin drug. Also, when it comes to the levels of cholesterol and statin drugs, one of the other things that people fail to realize is that cholesterol is vital for all of your functions. Cholesterol is what makes a lot of your hormones and your sex hormones. So cholesterol helps with the production of vitamin D. It's going to help with your sex hormones like estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. It's also going to help synthesize your production of bile, which is going to help for digestion. So if you completely remove all cholesterol from your diet and you try to get your cholesterol as low as possible, you're not going to be producing sex hormones. You are not going to be producing bile, which is going to wreak havoc on your digestive system because you won't be able to digest foods properly, and you won't be able to produce vitamin D, vitamin D being a very important hormone. So you don't want to decrease your consumption of cholesterol. Another thing with cholesterol is it is self-regulating. If you do not eat a lot of cholesterol, your body will simply produce more cholesterol. If you eat a lot of cholesterol, your body will simply produce less cholesterol. So it doesn't really matter how much you eat. There have been studies done, Framingham study particularly, and what these studies have shown is that the amount of serum cholesterol, so the cholesterol in your blood, has very little to do with the amount of cholesterol that you consume. People have eaten a dozen eggs a day for an entire month, and it has done nothing to increase their serum cholesterols. So this notion that if you eat cholesterol, your blood cholesterol is going to go up and you will develop heart disease is simply not true, and there is no scientific data to back up this claim. And all of these scientific studies that have been done to try to support this claim have all been handpicked. When you look at Ansel Keys' 7-nation study, there were something like 26 countries that were surveyed in this study, and only 7 of them were picked to support the lipid hypothesis. So a lot of these studies, you can't really go by what they say because they were handpicked and they left out a lot of the other data that didn't support their hypothesis. Again, this is a really good book, one of my favorites, and I think everyone should have a copy of this on their bookshelf. Next week, I'm going to be giving a book review of Robert Sapolsky's Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers, so be on the lookout for that. If you like what you saw today, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more great content, and I will see you again next time.